Okay, good afternoon. Botage. Okay. Lovely to be here. Who here is an entrepreneur or identifies as an entrepreneur? Okay. What about a manager, someone who manages people? Yeah. Any people design organizations or organizing systems? Set policies? Okay, cool. So I've done a bunch of all of those things, and it's nice just to see who is in the room. And today I would like to just share some of the stories within Spiral, and in particular how we've approached innovation in a decentralized way. So in 2007, this man changed my life. I never met him, and he's never met me. He's an artist called Jan Antoos Bertrand, and he has done lots of photographic exhibitions, movies, and on my last night in Europe, I saw a photo exhibition he put on called Vivant, or Alive. And it was lots of photos of beautiful animals, places, landscapes, and alongside each photo there was a statistic about something that was going wrong in the world. Climate change, peak oil, global poverty, food systems, over and over again. And then there was a small story about someone doing something about it, a group in Africa teaching children how to read, or so on. And it was the first time I had emotionally connected with global issues. Before that, it had been very intellectual. It had been very understanding in my mind, not my heart. And it was that exhibition which prompted me to quit my business and to figure out how I could make a difference in the world. I'd spent the last 2 or 3 months walking through France and Spain on the pilgrimage, so I had been thinking lots about what I wanted to do, but I didn't have any answers. And it was that exhibition which really prompted me to realize I didn't really know what was going on in the world. I was just busy making money, building a business, building technology, which I enjoyed doing. I did some maths, and I figured out that I might have 80,000 hours in my career if I was lucky. If I have a full life and a long run, that will be the sum total of my contribution. And I started to ask myself what would be the best use of that time. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that was an emotional coping strategy, in that when you look at global systems, it's often too big, too scary, it's hard to see how to make a difference. But when I broke down and said, I don't have to try and fix climate change, all I have to do is spend my time well, it became much easier to relate to, and it became much more comforting. It also brought out the engineer in me. So all I started to do was spend little pieces of time trying to make a difference and seeing what worked. So I did lots of things over 2 years. I worked on environmental campaigns like 350 with climate change. I worked on getting plastic bags out of New Zealand. That didn't work, but I tried. I did lots of stuff with youth leadership and training and education. And all through this time, I was supporting myself as a programmer. So I would do 2 days a week contracting, earn enough money to support myself, and the rest of my time I would be running experiments to say, how can I make a difference in the world? And over that time, I met lots and lots of people who wanted to make a difference as well. That there's this movement of people arising who are looking at our food systems, our money systems, our climate, our politics, our society, and seeing that it's significantly broken and they want to do something about it. But most of them don't have the resources to do so. Most of them are too busy trying to make a living in jobs that are often not meaningful for them. And so that was the key idea of Inspiral, was that to make a difference in the world, I just needed to help more people spend their life working on things that mattered. And I didn't have an opinion about what mattered. That was up to people to decide. So if someone was passionate about food systems or climate change, they could choose what to work on. All I did was try to help them one at a time quit their jobs, become freelancers, earn more money, have more freedom, so they could work on whatever they wanted. And this was 2010 when our first full-time person came on board, and that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years or so. So we began our life as an organization as a network of freelancers. I was a programmer, so I just started to say yes to every contract that came my way and then scrambling to find people to do the work. And over time, I started to filter for people who had aligned values, who wanted to make a difference, not just make money. And so we built up this network of contractors, and there's lots of examples of this form of organization emerging over the world I've seen, where people, instead of starting companies and becoming employees and having bosses, they become decentralized networks of freelancers who band together on a project, much like people do in the film industry, do work, the project finishes, they disband, and they do that over and over again. So teams are often forming, disbanding and reforming. So that's how we began our life, and that's what made our money, and that's what attracted the initial people. We had this idea from the beginning around decentralizing the organization. So instead of employing people, I just helped other contractors get work, and we focused a lot on mutual aid. So it was very much about how can I help you and how can you help me and how can you help someone else. Peers working together to support each other in whatever way was needed. And the more people I spoke with, the more I realized everyone is quite different. Some people really needed money, or they needed leads for contracts, or they needed skills, or they needed colleagues, or they needed a space to work. And we started to just do whatever someone needed to become strong and independent. Often when I've met people who wanted to make a difference in the world, they would try and do work without having any money behind them. And so we had this strong mantra of financial strength. First make money, then serve as an individual. We had a lot of programmers in the group, so we started to build software. And this was one of the things which really worked well for us, was instead of our organization being shaped by the software we consumed, we started to build software to shape us the way we wanted to do. So we've built lots of different software tools that are very opinionated about how we want to work together, because most organizations work with a command and control hierarchy. You choose the most capable, strongest, most experienced people, and you give them money, information, and control, and you give them coercive power over other people in the group. And when you start to not do that, when you try and do things where you decentralize money, information, and control, it's a very different way of organizing, and it's not possible without strong information systems. Well, it's possible, but it's not competitive without strong information systems because there's too much friction. And I think we're at a time in the world where the technology that's coming through is making decentralized network-based organizing not just possible, but optimal. And I think you can get a lot more efficiencies than traditional management structures. We had lots and lots of retreats. So we would get everyone together and we would spend time outside of the office 3 or 4 days at a time. We've done that every 6 months. I think we just finished our 11th retreat recently. And it wasn't just programmers geeking out with technology, it was people who had deep experience with facilitation, with coaching, with training, with personal development, with spiritual development. A lot of human skills came together. And from the beginning, in about year 2 or so, people started to see what we were doing and try and copy it around the world. None of them worked. And it wasn't for a long time that I started to realize what were the things that weren't working for other people that were working for us. And it's only in the last year or two I've realized the depth of experience we had with people and culture and holding space, combined with the technology, which really made our work possible. So we had lots of retreats and lots of human and social systems. We benefited a lot of cultural inheritance from different streams. We rented a space, so we had a co-working space, and one thing about Inspiral was it's basically a group of friends who grow businesses together. It's friends who know each other and trust each other. It's a very high trust environment, and it's quite a small closed system. And when you think about who your friends are or who you trust, it's usually the people you've spent the most time with. When you spend lots of time with people, trust naturally grows. You know them, they know you. And that you can spend lots of time online or lots of time in person, and the in-person time is much higher quality, much higher bandwidth. You need to spend less of it to build trust in a group. So having a co-working space where people could come in and spend time with each other in person, as well as our digital tools where they could collaborate remotely, worked quite well. So this idea of establish relationships in person and maintain them online was a philosophy that we stuck with for a while. As all these people came up, and another thing was that we diversified our skills very intentionally. We started out as a bunch of programmers, but our aspiration was to have access to all the skills you would have in a large corporate. So we found lawyers to start law firms, we found accountants, we found designers, we found salespeople. We diversified our skill set in the world of professional services. And that when we got that group of people together and helped them have a bit more freedom and a bit more money, they just naturally started companies. And the idea is that lots of people have seen the power corporations and companies have in the world, and they see how they're shaping the world. And when they say, I want to shape the world too, they naturally pull for the tools of commerce to do so. So we started to learn a lot about entrepreneurship and how to start businesses. So today we're a network of people. We've got at the center of the network, we have a foundation which is a cooperatively owned with about 40 shareholders. The shareholders have 1 share per person. Those shares do not pay dividends. They are for control only and governance. So it's a not-for-profit cooperative in the middle. We have also this model of around 200 contributors, people who might work full-time in the businesses, or they might work part-time, or they might volunteer, or they might just participate in our information systems. So this idea of a core group of people who govern and control the community and lots of people who participate in it is a structure we copied from open source. And that's the key model that we have at the moment. The thing with this model is it has a natural size. So we've found that as soon as we start going above 40 members or 50 members, that we start to hit the natural limits of which people can have many high trust relationships. So the community is naturally bounded. And at the moment, we're in the transition of becoming a network of multiple communities. The other part of this structure is that the members is a person that all the other members trust. So it takes a long time to become a member, but the way our decision-making works, usually a year or two of someone being active in the group before they will get a share in the core company. Whereas a contributor is someone that just one member trusts. So it's very easy to become a contributor to the group. And this idea of easy to join and hard to stay has been another philosophy that's worked well for our design. All right. So we started as a network of contractors. We did a lot of stuff with digital technology and cultural technology. We became a collective of ventures, and now we're transitioning to become a collective of communities. And that's the journey where we're at right now. So I wanted to talk a bit, the topic of this was innovation, and we've gained a reputation for doing lots of things quite differently, and we've copied most of it. So, for example, the way we do contributions, the whole financial model of our collective is one of financial contributions. Individuals contribute a little bit of money in, but mostly it's ventures give a portion of their revenue to the collective. And the percentage varies between 0 and 10% of revenue, typically. The main thing is this is self-set. A venture can choose how much money it can give, and it can change it at a moment's notice. There is no pricing scheme, there is no negotiation. A venture just says, this is what I choose to give. And this is how we did the network of contractors as well. When we were a bunch of contractors and someone's earning money, they might contribute 20% of their contracting to the collective, or they might contribute nothing, or 5% or 10%. It was completely up to them. And this model we copied from a gravel company I read about in a book, Good to Great, Jim Collins. Yep. And so the idea of this was that when you start to say, instead of pricing schemes where you say this is what you must pay, which is normal, to pay what you want, it changed the dynamic of the group substantially. It's a much different kind of business to run. All of our decisions we make via the consent process. So the idea is that anyone in the group can propose a decision to make. We want to change our name, we want to spend lots of money, we want to formally merge, we want to kick this person out of the collective. Any decision, someone in the group can say, I want us to make that decision. Then people can see that decision is being proposed and they can participate in it. So this consensus process is quite old and lots of people have used it in person, but when you do it in person, only one person can speak at a time. You're limited by the number of meetings you can have. You're limited by the number of meetings you can attend. People who've got more time on their hands have a louder voice. People who are more comfortable speaking in front of others have a louder voice. So it's got all these biases in there. So we built an online tool for these decision making so that we could have more decisions faster and cheaper. And this was the first big experiment we did in lowering the transaction cost of participatory organising. And so Lumio is a tool that's been going for 4 years now, and that's been the forefront of our experiments in how to do decentralised power and decentralised decisions. So when people give money to the group, at the beginning, whenever people made a contribution, I would be managing that money. So I would talk to people, I would get ideas, I would try and make the best decisions I could to spend that money in the interest of the whole. And I would try to inform people on how much money we had, what we were spending it on, and it was really hard. Like no matter how many profit and loss statements I put out or reports I put out, no one ever really knew how much money we had, what we'd spent it on, what we were thinking about spending it on. There was a big information gap. And the other one was that I was making all the decisions, and hopefully I got them right, but sometimes I got them wrong. And that there became this power differential where people treated me different because I had control of the money. So we built a system which we ran for 2 years off a spreadsheet, and then we eventually built software for around participatory budgeting. So if I give $1,000 to the foundation, I control how most of that money is spent. A small portion goes to the overheads that we agree on as a group, but most of it I control. And I can say, and then we have an internal system which looks a lot like a crowdfunding campaign. Anyone can propose a project, people can vote how much money they want to give a project, and that's how projects get funded. And this system had lots of dynamics that were interesting. Some of them were that people all of a sudden, because they had money to allocate and because they could log in and see how much money the group had, everyone knew how much money we had. And also, people had money they could control. So they could say, yes, I want to spend money on the retreat, or I want to spend money on the website. They could control it, which completely changed the relationship between financial contributions. They used to feel like a tax, and now they felt like putting money into the middle, but still controlling how it was spent. And additionally, everyone in the group who had an idea about how to make the organisation better now had an outlet for that idea. Because if it's like, oh, I think someone should fix the website, well, it's, okay, propose a project, get funded, you fix the website, or hire someone to fix the website. The separation of the organisation is something that someone else builds and I participate in disappeared. Now it was up to all of us to build the organisation, and it was up to all of us to get paid to build the organisation. So co-budget changed our dynamics quite strongly. One of the things that we struggled with a lot was accountability. How do people do good work? What do you do if someone's not doing good work? What do you do if someone's always late? How can you start to give people feedback? How can you give people support when they're struggling? Because we had no managers, we had no bosses. So we've built a stewarding system, which is peer-to-peer stewarding. Every member in the group is stewarded by one person. Every member in the group stewards one other person, and they check in with them frequently. And this was starting to figure out how to give people support, but also how to give people feedback mechanisms. How can people know that they are doing good work? The interesting thing about this was one of our groups, Lumio actually, they did this with their team of 12 people for about 18 months, I think. We looked at it, we liked it, and we copied it across the whole group. So lots of ideas start out in small parts of it that we scale up to the whole. So these are, and there's lots more things like this where we have been trying to look at what are the fundamentals that need to happen in a group of people trying to work together, and how can you do them in a way which quite opinionatedly distributes money, information and control rather than centralizing it. And I've got a dozen other examples. But I think there's some interesting things we've learned around the ingredients of innovation. Like, what are the components that make an innovative ecosystem, or at least what made ours innovative? These were the three things that I sort of came up with. So I think a big part of it is decentralized power. When you start to, we've developed a strong sensitivity to power in the group, because there's lots of different kinds. You can have power which is coercive power. If you don't do what I say, I will fire you. That's a legal form of power. You can have other power which is resourcing power. You have $1 and I have $10,000. Who has more power to influence an ecosystem? You can have reputational power. Everyone knows who you are, but no one knows who I am. You can have skill level differentials, like I'm not very good at something and you're very good at it. There are these lots of different forms of power which are quite natural, and you're always going to have contours of power in a group. But I think most groups, the power differentials are unhealthy. And that when you start to notice power differentials, such as, oh, Josh is always the person talking about in Spiral, or Josh is always making decisions about our money, and then you start to treat them like knots in your back when you're giving someone a massage. You need the power away. You start to spread out and distribute the power in the group quite consciously, then you can design a very different type of community. Additionally, when you have a high trust environment, who's ever been part of an organisation where people don't trust each other? and you started to see infighting or conflict or competition or people not being productive. I think it's tragically common in that it's quite rare to see a group of people, particularly groups of 50 or 100 people, with a high level of trust, where you can actually legitimately assume good intentions, when you can start to trust people around you to act in your best interest as well as theirs. And that doesn't just happen. You can design for that to happen. And you can design for it by aligning interests. You can design for it with transparency. You can design for it by distributing power and fairly sharing rewards. So we've done a lot of work about how do you actually build a high trust environment, because when you have that, so many things become possible and so many things become cheaper. And the other one was open sourcing. That when you have ideas where I've got a really good idea and I'm going to not share it with anyone and I'm going to keep it for myself so I can get reputation or money or whatnot, as opposed to sharing ideas as they form, copying ideas radically, everyone putting their best ideas in the middle, not just inside the company but outside the company, then you can start to have a very rapid pace of experimentation and innovation. And we copied a lot of that from the open source movement. Okay. Ooh. Am I going for time? Okay, so decentralized power. I found that the idea of decentralizing money, information, and control was the key strategy here. That we could look at because if you look at data and information, like most organizations think transparency is a good thing. There's this growing awareness and trend that the more transparency, you can build different ecosystems. But if you just make all your data public, no one will be able to do anything with it. It's just raw information. It takes time, it takes context, it often takes skill to turn data into actionable information. So I found that transparency was expensive and not free, and we had to actively resource how do you turn data into usable information for people. The idea of treating people like adults is useful if people behave like adults, but if people behave like children, it doesn't really work. So one of the things that I found with a decentralized organization, it's a little bit like a democracy. You really need your participants in the organization to be informed, to be capable, and to act in other people's best interests. So they have to have aligned values. So we started to have selection processes for aligned values, but then we started to think about how can we build our organizing system so that the natural consequence of people participating in it is that they become more mature, more responsible, more adult-like. How do you build there's a framing around deliberately developmental organizations, DDOs, which is a rich line of inquiry on that. And also, how do you design systems so that people naturally participate in them through intrinsic motivation? And there's lots of research in this area as well. You've probably heard about happiness, autonomy, control, and whatnot. The intrinsic motivation, you can design systems which optimize for that. So the idea of mutual support and high trust, the key of it is that we can go further together than we can alone. So that if we start to figure out how to work together, we can do much more than we ever can when we're individually with our own resources and skills. And I think the idea here of balancing strong cultural processes, retreats, coaching, personal development, bringing your whole of self to work, talking about emotions in the workplace, as well as technology such as Slack and Lumios and co-budgets and information systems, you can get this really rich balance of the emotional side of mutual support as well as the technical information side of mutual support. How do people actually know you need help? How do I know that this lead is good for you? How can I see what your skills are and whatnot? But I think the main thing here was that with a clear boundary around the organization, we found that the internal economy moved from being a transactional economy, give this to me and I give this to you and so on, let's negotiate terms, let's get contracts and clear agreements, to a gift economy. Oh, you need something? How about I just give it to you? And how about you just give something to someone else? And that if you can avoid bad actors, gift economies are highly efficient. And then the idea of open source businesses. That, you know, a lot of the software, we have a lot of software companies, they build software, they sell software. They also open source their software so anyone can copy it for free. And it's a very different kind of business model, but it's possible. There are people building businesses in these ways. But more importantly, we are very intentional about open sourcing the way we do business so that other people can copy that. Because if we just made Inspiral the best version we could, that would be great. We might help 100 people or 200 people. But if we actively speak about it, blog about it, share about it, and other people take pieces of it and copy it and make their organization stronger, we'll have much more impact from our work. And this whole idea of how can you transition from being individual ventures to collective ones was something we've explored a lot. So those were the main things that I thought about when I thought about what is it that made our ecosystem innovative. Because when you get these, people naturally create, they naturally invent. People are so innovative and creative, and that I found you couldn't stop them from doing it. But getting the preconditions right took a lot of clear opinions and processes. So a couple of minutes just to wrap up on some things that where my current research is going. It's a little bit speculative. So one of the things that I've been looking at is how do you do investment in an ethical way? And additionally, how can you start to make capitalism so that it's more generative rather than extractive? Because I think you can look at many problems in the world and say, actually, it's the way we use money, it's the way we do business, which is at the root cause of a lot of these problems. And particularly, the way that the whole business sector is addicted to growth. If a company is making profits, it's not enough. You need to be growing profits, particularly if you're publicly traded. So how could you imagine, how could we build an ecosystem where companies were happy not to grow, to be stable? And I think you need to talk about changing money supplies, and there's lots of ways of doing it. But one intervention that I'm exploring is around how can you cap the returns of founders and investors. So if you invest in a company, you'll get fair returns. If you start a company that's successful, you'll get good returns and fair returns, but they won't be perpetual. You will not control the profits of this venture for its whole of its life, which is what happens now in the current financial system. And this is about contracting at the formation stage of a company and investing with very different expectations. And that there's a way to make these kinds of investments more competitive than the traditional ones. They open up deals which are unavailable to the unicorn chasers of the startup world. And the other one is around how can we scale businesses and how can we build international businesses in quite different ways. So the idea of, I've seen firsthand what an entrepreneurial cooperative can do. You can get 100, 200 people together, they'll start lots of businesses, some will succeed, some will go okay, some will fail. But then if other people want to start entrepreneurial cooperatives, how can you have relationships with them, which is focused on how do you share your best businesses with each other? How can you collaborate to build more international ventures? And there's a whole line of inquiry around this. Because I think that just like when you have a strong gift economy internally, I've seen the cost of transactions go down, that if you have a cooperative of entrepreneurial networks around the world actively sharing and supporting each other, I think you can see the costs of building and scaling global ventures go down so that they actually become more competitive than other models. So that's a line of inquiry that I'm diving into. So that's me. Thanks for listening and look forward to some questions.
Bom, em primeiro lugar, thank you very much for being here, Joshua. It's very nice to hear you, all the experience and everything that you guys did and have been doing. Então, estou agradecendo para ele, né, para dizer que bacana isso tudo que eles conseguiram fazer e estão fazendo. E a gente quer saber um pouco mais. Em quanto tempo vocês conseguiram já ter um resultado mensurável dessa experiência em espiral, desse grupo? Você poderia detalhar para a gente um pouco mais disso? Porque você explicou em detalhes como surgiu, como são os procedimentos. A gente percebe que é tudo muito organizado, né? Tem metodologia, tem processos. Agora, conta para a gente o tempo que levou para chegar nesse estágio que vocês se encontram hoje.
So I think there's lots of ways to measure results. What? Do you want to do short forms or? Lots of ways to measure results, and I found that the main thing I was looking for was what is the quality of people we are attracting, and that was the first measure.
Há várias maneiras de se medir os resultados, e eu percebi que a principal coisa que eu procurava era avaliar a qualidade das pessoas que nós estávamos atraindo.
Then it was, is the way we are working with them making them happy?
Outra coisa é se a forma como estávamos trabalhando estava deixando essas pessoas felizes.
Are they making enough money and are our clients happy?
Se elas estavam ganhando dinheiro suficiente, se nossos clientes estavam felizes.
And I think that was the first level of success that I would say that I tried to measure.
Esse foi o primeiro nível de sucesso que eu tentei medir.
And at that stage, it was still reliant on some of us, a small number of people, volunteering lots, putting in lots of energy to keep it alive in an unsustainable way.
Nesse estágio, nós ainda nos baseávamos em um pequeno grupo de pessoas, dedicando bastante tempo e energia.
So the next level of success that I tried to measure was how many people are actively trying to build Inspiral, so it's not dependent on a small number.
O nível seguinte que eu tentei medir era quantas pessoas estavam ali construindo o Inspiral, para que esse pequeno grupo inicial não tivesse que fazer todo o trabalho.
And that took us about 3 years. It was 3 years when I quit being the founder and just became a participant in the network.
Isso levou mais ou menos 3 anos. Depois de 3 anos foi quando eu deixei o meu papel de fundador e passei a ser um participante.
And the final measure that I've sort of been looking for has been, can Inspiral as an ecosystem heal itself and adapt to external environment?
E o último estágio que eu tenho avaliado é até que ponto o Inspiral pode se tornar um ecossistema que possa se curar e se adaptar ao ambiente externo.
That took about 2 more years. So it was only at the beginning of this year that we finally hit the level of life or aliveness where I felt like Inspiral was not dependent on me or a few other people to not just survive, but to actively grow and thrive and adapt.
Isso levou mais ou menos 2 anos. Então, no início desse ano é que nós chegamos finalmente àquele nível em que o Inspiral tinha uma vida própria e que em que eu percebi que ele não dependia mais de mim e que ele poderia trabalhar sozinho para sobreviver, crescer e se adaptar.
Alguém gostaria de aproveitar a oportunidade aqui para fazer uma pergunta para o Joshua? Por favor, passe o microfone para ela.
É melhor eu fazer em português ou em inglês direto? Pode fazer em português, ela traduz. Beleza. A que eu queria fazer é que a Nova Zelândia está consistentemente nos rankings melhor nos rankings de facilidade de empreendedorismo. E o Brasil, obviamente, não. E então, eu queria saber como é que as políticas públicas ou os incentivos do governo ajudam iniciativas como a sua na Nova Zelândia.
Not really. We were very independent from government and we received very little support from government. It was, in New Zealand, there was not much happening in the social enterprise space or the distributed business space, so we created everything we needed.
Na verdade, nós não temos nenhum incentivo do governo, nós trabalhamos de forma bastante independente. Há, na realidade, muito pouco apoio do governo. No espaço social, de desenvolvimento social, é muito pouca influência, nós trabalhamos por conta própria.
I think the culture of New Zealand shaped us a lot and the environment of New Zealand shaped us a lot, but I think a lot of the core ideas are quite replicable across lots of other ecosystems.
Na realidade, eu acho que a cultura da Nova Zelândia nos moldou, eu acho que o ambiente da Nova Zelândia também nos moldou, mas eu acho que os valores centrais de inovação e empreendedorismo podem ser replicados e copiados em qualquer lugar.
E eu vou pedir para a Sandra complementar um pouco sobre a visão dela, né, de quem está de fora e é de dentro, porque ela é brasileira, né?
Uma coisa que me chamou muita atenção, ao mesmo tempo que a Nova Zelândia é o país número 1 do mundo em facilidade de abrir empresa, e eu fui empreendedora aqui no Brasil, eu sei que aqui a gente está, acho que é 113, se não me engano, essa é a diferença. Mas me chamou muito a atenção, eu fui recentemente num evento, a gente fez um evento para 400 pessoas em Wellington, e tinha muita gente do governo. E esse evento tinha 3 temas. Por que você devia abrir os seus negócios, por que você devia abrir a sua tecnologia e por que você devia ter democracia aberta. E eu tive a oportunidade de participar de um painel com o governo, onde eles estavam discutindo como que eles poderiam usar as ferramentas do Lumio e as ferramentas de participação para permitir uma democracia aberta. E para mim foi incrível ver aquilo tão de perto, pessoas que tomavam decisão e que daqui a 2 dias iam estar sugerindo políticas públicas. E para mim eu achei aquilo fantástico. E eu tive a oportunidade no mesmo evento de ver uma pessoa de Taiwan, que é a primeira ministra transgênera digital. Aliás, Taiwan, todos os exemplos de melhor democracia aberta no mundo são em Taiwan. Recomendo se informarem, porque é muito incrível. E ela estava lá dividindo também como eles estão abrindo e fazendo os processos. Então, eu estou vendo um caminho oposto. Não é que os governos ajudam a formarem redes. É um caminho sem volta. Elas estão acontecendo no mundo inteiro e o governo está incorporando essas práticas porque está precisando rever a forma de operar. Então, é o caminho inverso que eu tenho visto. Quero muito que chegue aqui no Brasil.
Mais perguntas? Alguém gostaria de fazer uma pergunta a mais para o Joshua? Quer fazer? Mário.
Eu queria perguntar para o Joshua, fiquei um pouco intrigado com a separação entre a Inspiral e as empresas incubadas na Inspiral. Por exemplo, o Lumio. Então, são 20 pessoas. Como? Lumio é uma das empresas. Ela tem 20 pessoas. Cada pessoa da Lumio é uma integrante da Inspiral. E como funciona o relacionamento entre elas? Só continuando a pergunta, supondo que a Lumio, ou Lumio, cresça naturalmente, embora possa não ter o objetivo de crescer, supondo que cresça e ultrapasse 200, 500 pessoas, como se imagina que esse relacionamento, quer dizer, como que esse modelo pode existir de uma forma mais ampla, no caso de grandes empresas, que eventualmente sejam incubadas nesse modelo.
We've been doing lots of thinking about growth and scale as we hit the limits of our current model. The way I think about organizational scale is a little bit like water. Water has very different forms when it's ice or steam or liquid, and I think groups of people have very different dynamics at different sizes.
Eu tenho pensado muito sobre crescimento, agora principalmente que nós chegamos ao nosso limite, não é? Pensando na escala organizacional, eu penso muito que seria como se fosse a água, né? Você tem diferentes estados da água, líquido, gasoso, sólido, né? Então, acho que tem um pouco essa ideia em relação à empresa.
And I found that by becoming clear on the terms of the scale we're talking about has been very helpful to clarify conversations about Inspiral or Ventures or Lumio.
Esclarecendo os termos de escala de crescimento, fica mais fácil ter essa conversa em relação a Inspiral, a Lumio, etc.
So I think about human systems as individuals, small teams, communities and networks.
Eu penso em sistemas como indivíduos, pequenas comunidades e redes.
So Inspiral operates at the network level and the community level.
Inspiral opera no nível da rede e da comunidade.
The model which worked really well for us was a community of people with different skills and lots of ventures, all sharing time together and learnings.
O modelo que funcionou muito bem para nós foi um modelo de uma comunidade de várias pessoas com várias habilidades e colaborando.
And we're learning how to have multiple communities like that relate to each other in a network.
E aprendendo como é que múltiplas comunidades como essa podem trabalhar juntos fazendo uma rede de comunidades.
When I think about Lumio with 200 people, then I would think about members of Lumio as small teams participating in multiple communities. Maybe the Wellington community, maybe the Brazil community, maybe the digital nomads community. So parts of Lumio participating in multidisciplinary communities.
Quando eu penso na Lumio com 200 pessoas, por exemplo, eu penso nos membros da Lumio participando em pequenas equipes, em diferentes comunidades, trocando ideias, trocando habilidades e aprendendo.
And that then Inspiral is just a network of communities and people who know about each other and collaborate together.
Inspiral se torna, então, uma rede de pessoas, comunidades e empreitadas colaborando e se conhecendo.
The final point would be that our language of is something inside Inspiral or is something from Inspiral
Essa linguagem de ser algo dentro da Inspiral ou a partir da Inspiral.
is somewhat of a fiction, because at the end of the day, all there are individual people with relationships and knowledge and language. So there
Na
is...
verdade, isso é... Na verdade, isso não... Essa divisão entre estar dentro da Inspiral ou sair da Inspiral é uma coisa que não existe, porque, no fundo, trata-se de pessoas trabalhando juntas, que se relacionam, têm o conhecimento e têm as habilidades.
And that I find the language we use when talking about organizations, is Lumio a part of Inspiral, is actually a falsehood.
Em relação à linguagem, quando a gente pensa na Lumio como sendo parte da Inspiral, na realidade não é assim.
So that's the best answer I have.
É a melhor forma de responder essa pergunta.
Vou passar para a Sandra, para ela complementar, e vou aproveitar e já deixar uma pergunta para ela também. Se a gente tem algo que se assemelha a isso aqui no Brasil, certamente a gente tem vocação para isso, e em que contexto você acha que se aplicaria aqui no Brasil? Alguma coisa bem semelhante ao que vocês fazem lá?
A primeira coisa é que já existem muitas redes no Brasil. Existem redes em São Paulo, existem redes no Rio. As redes aqui são mais homogêneas, eu diria. Então, você tem, por exemplo, a Dervish, que é uma rede mais na área de comunicação e marketing, pesquisa de tendências. Ou você tem o Goma, no Rio de Janeiro, que é uma rede que faz consultoria e tem um coworking space. Eu não conheço ainda uma rede que tenha a diversidade de talentos e nem o ferramental que tem a Inspiral. Então, essa diversidade de você ter as pessoas de tecnologia, as pessoas, os advogados, os contadores, os consultores de organizações, enfim. Essa diversidade eu não conheço, mas o Brasil tem uma vocação absurda para redes, é o país que sempre foi, desde o início da internet, o número 1 no mundo em redes sociais, porque isso são quem nós somos. Então, o trabalho em rede faz parte da maneira como nós somos. Então, existe muito. O que eu acho que não existe ainda é um nível de colaboração das redes com as empresas que eu vejo lá fora e com governos, enfim. Hoje, as empresas, elas pensam, eu vou ter que fazer um projeto, eu não preciso fazer internamente, por que eu não me associo com uma rede que tem uma escala global e que tem tantos talentos? Isso eu não sei se está acontecendo tanto no Brasil. E eu não conheço também redes que tenham ferramental, porque vem muito da origem da tecnologia e dos processos de práticas sociais que eles têm. Mas tem muita rede aqui e todo mundo querendo colaborar. E talvez o movimento mais bonito que eu esteja vendo é de formar uma rede das redes, né? De você poder juntar forças. E eu queria muito que as empresas fizessem parte dessas redes também, porque elas têm um papel muito grande de poder fomentar esse ambiente.